The first time I saw my CEO cry, I thought I had walked into the wrong room. It was nearly midnight, and the entire office building was silent except for the distant hum of air conditioners and the occasional flicker of fluorescent lights. Most employees had gone home hours ago, but I was still there, finishing inventory reports that had somehow become my responsibility after another round of staff shortages. My name is Daniel Carter, and at the time, I was just a maintenance supervisor trying to support my 8-year-old daughter Emma after losing my wife 3 years earlier. Life had become a routine of survival. Wake up, work, take care of Emma, sleep, repeat. That night I was heading toward the executive floor to fix a leaking water dispenser when I heard something unexpected, crying, not quiet sniffles, the kind of crying that comes from a broken heart. I froze. The sound was coming from the CEO's private conference room. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to walk away. Employees weren't supposed to be on this floor after hours, and certainly not near executive offices. But something about the pain in those sobs stopped me. Slowly, I approached the slightly open door. Inside sat Elizabeth Harper, the CEO, the woman every employee feared, the woman who seemed impossible to intimidate, the woman whose confidence could silence an entire boardroom. Yet there she was, sitting alone at the long conference table with tears streaming down her face. For a moment I considered leaving. Then my shoes squeaked against the polished floor. Elizabeth looked up, our eyes met. I expected anger, instead I saw embarrassment and loneliness. "Daniel," she asked softly. I swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, Ms. Harper, I didn't mean to interrupt." She quickly wiped her eyes. "It's okay." Silence that followed felt unbearable. Then something unexpected happened. "Could you stay for a minute?" I blinked. "Me?" She nodded. "Please." I slowly stepped into the room. The most powerful woman in the company looked smaller somehow, human, fragile. She stared down at the papers scattered across the table. Then she asked a question I never expected. "Do you keep going after losing someone you love?" The room suddenly felt colder. My chest tightened. 3 years earlier, I had stood beside a hospital bed and watched my wife Sarah take her final breath after a long battle with cancer. There wasn't a day I didn't miss her. I pulled out a chair and sat down. For several moments neither of us spoke. Finally I answered, "You don't move on." Elizabeth looked up. "Don't?" I shook my head. "You move forward." Her eyes narrowed slightly. I continued. "Pain never completely leaves. You just learn how to carry it." For a long time she said nothing. Then fresh tears appeared. "My father died last week." The words came out barely above a whisper. I suddenly understood. The company had announced he was ill, but nobody knew how serious it was. Elizabeth stared at the city lights outside the massive windows. "He built this company from nothing." Her voice cracked. "He was my best friend." I listened quietly. "He always had answers," she continued. "When investors attacked us, he knew what to do. When the economy crashed, he knew what to do. When I doubted myself, he knew what to say." She looked directly at me. "Now he's gone." The first time I realized that titles and wealth couldn't protect anyone from grief. Pain doesn't care about job descriptions. Heartbreak doesn't care about bank accounts. We sat there talking for nearly 2 hours, not as CEO and employee, just as two people who understood loss. Before I left, she thanked me. I assumed that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning I arrived at work expecting life to return to normal. Instead, I received a message from the executive office. The CEO wanted to see me immediately. My coworkers stared as I walked toward the elevator. Most assumed I was about to be fired. Honestly, so did I when I entered Elizabeth's office. She motioned for me to sit down, then she surprised me again. "Need your help?" I laughed nervously. "With maintenance?" She smiled faintly. "No." She slid a folder across her desk. Inside were reports, employee surveys, and financial summaries. "What do you see?" she asked. I looked through the documents. The answer became obvious. "People are unhappy." She nodded, hesitated. Nobody spoke honestly to CEOs, but she waited, so I told the truth. "Company stopped feeling like a family." Expression remained serious. I continued. "Everyone is afraid. Managers only focus on numbers. Employees feel invisible. Nobody believes leadership cares anymore." Room became silent. Finally, Elizabeth leaned back. "My father used to walk through every department." I nodded. "He knew everyone's name, attended employee weddings, visited workers in hospitals." A tear rolled down her cheek. "Somewhere along the way, we forgot that." That conversation changed everything. Over the following months, Elizabeth began transforming the company. She visited departments personally. She listened to employees. She created support programs for struggling families. She introduced scholarships for employees' children. For the first time in years, morale started improving. But not everyone liked the changes. Several executives pushed back. They argued she was focusing too much on people and not enough on profits. Board members questioned her leadership. Investors complained. Pressure mounted from every direction. One afternoon, I found her staring out her office window. "You okay?" I asked. She laughed. "Honestly, no." The board had scheduled a vote regarding her leadership. If enough members opposed her vision, she could lose control of the company her father built. For weeks she barely slept. Stress consumed her. The future looked uncertain. Then something incredible happened. Word spread throughout the company. Employees learned about the board's concerns. Thousands of workers began sending letters, not complaints, support, stories, messages describing how the company's new culture had changed their lives. Single mothers receiving assistance, families avoiding homelessness, workers finally feeling valued. The board received every letter. Hundreds became thousands. Thousands became tens of thousands. The movement grew beyond anything anyone expected. When the vote finally arrived, board members couldn't ignore what they saw. Profits had increased. Employee turnover had dropped dramatically. Customer satisfaction had reached record highs. Most importantly, people believed in the company again. Elizabeth won the vote unanimously. When she announced the result during a company-wide meeting, the entire auditorium erupted into applause. But what happened afterward mattered even more. She called me onto the stage. I nearly had a heart attack. Confused, I walked toward the microphone. Elizabeth smiled. Then she addressed thousands of employees. "Many people think leadership changes happen because of strategy." Crowd listened carefully. "Sometimes they happen because one person chooses kindness." She looked directly at me. The night after my father died, I was sitting alone in a conference room, convinced I couldn't carry the weight anymore. Audience became completely silent. Then someone stayed. I felt my throat tight. He listened, cared. He reminded me that grief isn't something we move on from. It's something we move forward with. Tears filled my eyes. The auditorium stood and applauded, not for me, for the lesson, for the reminder that every human being matters, regardless of position, regardless of status, regardless of title. A year later, my life looked completely different. Emma was thriving. The company was stronger than ever. And Elizabeth had become the kind of leader her father would have been proud of. Sometimes people ask me what changed everything. They expect a complicated answer, a business strategy, a financial breakthrough, a leadership seminar. But the truth is much simpler. Everything changed because one broken person was willing to be honest, and another broken person was willing to listen. The world often teaches us that strength means never crying, never struggling, never needing help. But real strength is something different. Real strength is reaching out when you're hurting. Real strength is staying when someone else is hurting. Because you never know when a single conversation will change a life, or a company, or an entire future. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't solve someone's problem. It's simply sit beside them in their darkest moment and remind them they aren't alone. And sometimes that changes everything.